everybody. Welcome back to the Amazon European Masters. Vibrant Jamada coming at you after a Bifrost victory over Fnatic Team Queso. And Jamada, I don't know what Bifrost were up to in the couple of days that they had off, because that's a completely different game style.
I'm going to have to ask what, breakfast, diet plan, whatever it was they were eating, I need it, because that was some spectacular League of Legends, to be honest with you, coming out today into Fnatic Team Queso. I mean, the expectations coming in today were hard game probably for Bifrost, right? Assuming Fnatic TQ have cleaned up their game in the mid game. But we didn't see that Fnatic TQ that gets that early lead, that gets the ball rolling for themselves. We saw a hungry C-Boy making plays towards the top side, whilst Fnatic weren't really doing too much to cross-map it or anything of nature, match it too often. And of course, here you go, the man of the hour himself, C-Boy. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks.
I mean, the first question that I have to ask you off the back of that kind of matchup is, you're 3-1 in this group. Off the back of a performance like that, how positive is the feeling in the camp right now?
We're feeling really good right now. We have, we came into this week expecting to get out of groups. We're in a pretty good spot. I think all we need is 2 wins, and we have one of them right now. I think this was probably the match we thought is going to be the hardest. I think we have a good chance now of getting first in groups, because we need to lose 1 game and Fnatic needs to win the rest of theirs, and then we still have the tiebreaker. So I think we're really happy right now. I think playing the play-in helped us a bit as well with the nerfs. And yeah, we're just doing good.
Yeah, and actually, I wanna hit on that point of going through the play-ins, because obviously it's not something that all of the teams in the group stage get to do. Do you think, obviously, I think traditionally EUM, there's not always a pretty big gap between the end of the split and then EUM starting up, but do you think, going through the play-ins has actually helped you guys kind of find your own form on this patch in the Amazon EU Masters? Because I think right now you guys are hitting well above most of our expectations for Bifrost at the moment.
Yeah, I think going through play-ins is always an advantage. If you don't have it, there is a long break between when you had your finals and when you have the main event. And sometimes scrims can become a bit boring. If you don't really the goal, it's so long before you have to play an official match, and that's what everyone wants to play, right? And I think also the nerves of playing in EU Masters. I think having the play-in, that we were a bit nervous in there, and then now when we're at main event, we're just happy to be here, and we're not really nervous anymore.
Yeah, and actually, I want to ask about the sort of nerves on Ornn, because I think domestically as well, we'd seen a lot of up and down performances throughout playoffs from you. Last week seemed very fine. Today, however, a completely different beast. What's changed for you mentally, or what kind of thought processes have changed the way that you decided to approach today compared to perhaps week 1?
I don't think that much has changed. I think we're just comfortable playing officials compared to what we used to. I think we kind of came in with the mindset of we're here to win everything. And I think some of the times we lost in the split, we were a bit nervous, I think we're just fully confident in ourselves today. And I think me especially, I had a really good game, and I'm going to keep that for the rest of the day.
And I think that is something that I really want to touch on, this idea of how confident and well looking you were in that game individually. Going forward into the final couple of games of the day, are we going to see this same proactive, aggressive C-Boy that a lot of the NLC fans have loved to watch, but people who are just watching the Amazon European Masters maybe haven't seen as much of just yet?
I think it depends on the draft. I think this game, it wasn't I was crazy ganking everywhere. I think I had the right timings of when I had to gank. And I think Fnatic had a hard time finding their footing in early game. So I think that's why it looked so good. All my ganks worked out and Maxis didn't. So yeah, I think we just have to discuss when the right timing is for me to abuse.
Nice, the humility there. No just I'm the best player, but an understanding of we're going to be a bit flexible. We're going to see how it is. But of course, a massive congratulations on the result and the personal performance, and good luck in the rest of your games today.
Thank you so much.
it's always great to hear from C-Boy and, of course, anyone in this tournament talking to players about what they can achieve and how they're doing is always great to hear because they give that little bit extra spice in terms of the analysis, which is usually your job, Jamada, but, sometimes we got to get the professionals in.
Yeah, the professionals, of course. And yeah, I mean, that game in general, like we've kind of iterated already, a different kind of form. Obviously, from Bifrost, Fnatic, maybe some questions, we'll start to talk about them perhaps when we get to the third game of the day. But Bifrost just looked so willing to, take fights pretty much on a dime, it felt like a lot of the time, particularly from Jewel. And that could actually come back to bite them later on in the day. If they do overstep, right, they can always get punished. But, as we're seeing in these replays, always the first to the punch, it felt like in this game.
They were, especially in the very early stages, it was always a case of Bifrost being the ones to pull the trigger. And sometimes they didn't always work out, like this play, BDS and Rux just giving them a little bit of a run around with the clones and managing to get out alive. But when it came to fights like this might have been the real big turning point. It was all about Bifrost.
Yeah, this is kind of the point where you start to feel, I'm not sure if Fnatic can even take Bifrost anymore in a 5v5. That timing might just be gone, to be honest with you. And I feel like from this point on, it was just a little bit too difficult. And then it just turned into a game of Fnatic Team Kessel trying to find picks, and moments like these where they just overreach, Rux goes in, then all of a sudden Ornn is in a position where he can get picked on by this teleport from Shikari, and it just bled into more kills for Bifrost time and time again. And it was only really at that Baron steal from Maxi where we had, maybe a bit of worry. And again, this is maybe another moment where, Jewel kind of goes a little bit deep, but then the rest of the team are able to capitalize on the fact that their engage did just go in out, but it kept Fnatic in place long enough for follow-up to eventually come through.
But that was the case. Odie was being called up by the rest of the team like, hey, just to let you know, we've engaged. So if you want to head on down at your earliest convenience, and they turn up and kill 4 people. But as you can see, Bifrost, there was a little bit of a dip in the middle there, just where Fnatic TQ were making a couple of picks and did look like they might have been staging a comeback. But when we're talking about what was achieved in that game, it's Bifrost all the way picking up their 3rd win, which puts them in very strong stead. As C-Boy said, a couple of wins could be all it takes, and guaranteeing one in the first game of the day here at the Amazon European Masters sets them up really, really well. On the flip side, of course, transitioning into our second game of the day and just discussing what that's going to look like. Fnatic TQ are going to be tied up with the winner of our next matchup. ESCA will be going up against BDS Academy, and fortunes haven't been so favorable for these two sides, but both of them looking to make a resurgence.
Yeah, right. I think, both 1 and 2, very important match for them to win, because if you lose this game, that's when things start to look a little bit scary, right? That's when, you're now looking down up to everybody else, right?
Yes.
From the down position up to everybody else. And I mean, realistically, I think especially for, ESCA, right? You're looking at then, Fnatic Team Kessel, who sure you've beaten already and do look a little bit shaken perhaps coming, into their games later on. But then you also have to play a Bifrost who look a little bit on fire right now. So I think from both perspectives, right? BDS maybe run their hands a little bit more. If they can pick up this win, they can go into, their Fnatic game, hopefully pull out a win there, and then actually, look towards Bifrost and maybe contest them, depending on the level of form that we get, and get their revenge from week 1. But such a pivotal game to win simply on the basis of you lose this, the chances of going through kind of start to dwindle, right? You're starting to look at that 3-3-3-3-3 kind of setup where we get the meme timeline of all of the tiebreakers.
I want that timeline so much. I want the 4 tiebreakers. This is a little bit of a spoiler for tomorrow, but I'm going to sprinkle a tiny bit of our prep for that one as well. There is a world where both groups, C and A, can be 4-way tiebreakers. And to me,
A would be spooky.
Just about. It would have to be some weird results, but it can happen.
Right,
so
I'll not sure about that, but yeah, we do have a brief delay. We'll hopefully be in Champ Select within a minute or so. But yeah, I think sort of starting to look now towards perhaps draft expectations for this game and the like.
Okay.
I think for me, for ESCA, I want to see something which effectively just props HARPOON up in the bottom lane alongside Marlon. I think HARPOON has been sort of like one of the key sort of bright parts of ESCA, especially in the later stages. I think also Xeonerr, making sure that you continue to give Xeonerr early game proactivity tools to actually enable the rest of the team, specifically obviously the bottom side. I think you can also play through the mid lane with Mrozku as well. I don't think that's necessarily an avenue that you have to, ignore. I think his very assassin heavy-esque champion pool is something that you definitely want to leverage. And of course, in the picks and bans, I'm not sure if it's happened every game, but consistently, the Yone or Kali bans, that leaves a lot of picks open, which can be very favorable for you. And I think on the opposite side for BDS Academy, it's really, I feel like BDS, they can play through basically all of their lanes. It just depends on the game plan they come into any individual game with. Obviously though, however, you look at the bottom side, you see Crownshot and you say, we want to give this man the resources. We're in the champ select finally. LeBlanc will be taken away from Xico. And of course, Zeri on the red side, no surprise bans just yet.
It'll be fascinating to see what we get prioritized, because there's so many champions that you can ban out in the current meta. It's where you want to be pinching, because you could take away one champ from 3 different roles. There's still going to be power available. We've seen this time and time again. The one that's leaping out to me is probably going to be the Volibear, the Ahri taken off the table by ESCA. Xico is a good Ahri player. Mrozku can also play the champion very, very well. We've seen it so far. And there's the Volibear being removed.
Yeah, and a lot of mid lane mobility being taken away. So I wonder if ESCA are eyeing up a Jarvan first pick. If they go for a Xayah ban, I wouldn't be surprised to honestly see that one come out as a B1 pick. We'll see what they want to eye up though, because of course Crownshot has had some pretty scary performances on things like the Aphelios as well. So I wouldn't be necessarily too surprised to maybe even see them target that one away on principle, but instead they actually go towards the Jinx. So what are they eyeing up here? Because I mean, realistically then, you're starting to look towards the AD carries. Once the Jinx is off the table, the Aphelios is still there. Does Harpoon necessarily want to play it, first pick it? I think it'd be very risky. Xayah also still up and available, which could be a first pick for Harpoon too. Plenty of options as the time ticks down for BDSA, and they will remove away the Akali, but the Yone is there for Mrozku if he wants it. We'll see whether or not we get any of those kinds of very spicy picks here.
I don't think it'll be the first pick. The Aphelios is actually going to be the priority for Harpoon, which is a little bit interesting. Potentially, the response could be the Misfortune. It could be the Xayah. There's still power available for BDS Academy out of the LFL. And they're going to have their pick of the litter in terms of jungler as well. The Jarvan is still available. Yeah, the Jarvan is still available if they want it, and they could very well just go Xayah Jarvan, and then all of a sudden Rakan turns into a pretty high value pick. I think the issue is if you do go for the Jarvan, there's a Thresh on the opposite side then becomes quite high value too, and just being able to provide safety net, sort of, stave off some of the earlier engages as the game progresses. Obviously Thresh kind of loses that level of value of the Flay, but still a lot of setup there. It will be the Zhao though for Sheo, which is definitely not a pick that we've seen as frequently as other AD junglers in the meta at the moment. Of course, did get hit a couple of times throughout the last couple of patches. Has fallen out of favor, but we will just get the early Yone lock-in. And I wonder if this then means we'll get something like Lilia to pair up with the Yone. I believe it's something that we saw. My brain is telling me GL. Rabble on that pick as well, but I don't think it was paired up with the Yone particularly. We'll see what we get in pairing with the jungle matchup, but for now, HeSSZero will give himself the early Kennen lock. So a lot of pretty strong team fighting ultimates already there and present. The Fate Seal, the Slicing Maelstrom, the flanking potential right now of Team ESCA, very scary. The issue is, their sort of highest value target, always the AD carry in most cases. Xayah does have the Featherstorm to try and play and work around those ultimates. And also the Viktor, definitely an interesting pick into the Yone. I think it's a matchup that can be very skill dependent, yes, but I think for the Viktor side, it's just a bit annoying to play and can definitely favor the Yone if Mrozku knows the champions matchups inside out, which I expect he does. But of course, can deal with teamfight situations well, and this, of course, why they picked it up. They've got a lot of zoning tools, BDSA, in these teamfights. We'll see how they decide to round out the draft as we go into the second ban phase. We can see supports being pinched out, junglers as well. As you mentioned, if you're seeing something like the Lily, you want to have a decent damage profile between your jungler and your mid laner. Take away the AP junglers, take away the Diana, take away the Lilia. Suddenly, I don't know what you're looking at.
I will say though, it could be a bit of a bait because they have the Kennen deck. Kennen loves being solo AP, so they don't necessarily have to go, Zona on the likes of Diana, the Lilia, which we could see as a ban come out just in the sake of principle, really, for BDSA. Irelia will be moved away on the opposite side because it's a pretty good matchup into the Kennen. Of course, we know Agresivoo does play it. We could also see the Camille also follow that. Will BDSA fall into the pit of going for the Lilia ban, or will they go towards, another jungler they don't want Zona on? They'll go for the Udyr. All right, so definitely kind of a bit of a mix of obviously, engage with the sort of the chem tank and the bear stance, also playing a bit of defense. I'm not sure that Udyr is something that they wouldn't necessarily gone for here, so we'll see what the options are, but just feeling like they don't want to have to deal with that as, you know, a Viktor and a Xayah, albeit I would be happy if I was Viktor and Xayah to have a Udyr run into me, to be honest, just because it's very easy to dissuade him. But the Renata will come in, very strong ultimate to deal with all of the diving, especially onto something like Yone. If you catch him with, you know, that hostile takeover, all of a sudden he's autoing his own team for 400 damage once he's at 2 items per auto attack, and hovering a potential Lulu to go with this Aphelios, and I mean, it would make a bunch of sense. Renata can't necessarily hard punish an enchanter like Lulu inside of the lane, as it's actually going to be another diving buddy with the Nocturne, and that Lulu hover did get left quite late, so I wonder if that's still what's on their minds. It's hovered again. Seems like it will be in conversation at the very least. I feel like Team ESCA, they are lacking a bit of dive. Lulu would be a little bit off theme with what's going on right now. I think maybe something like the Leona could work instead, maybe even something like the Norla single target. But I think when you're looking at Xayah, it could be a little bit hard to lock him down, so they're just going to give Harpoon, you know, that sort of prompt, that sort of pedestal we spoke about, to sort of provide him the extra tools to try and carry these later stage team fights, as well as having the rest of his team dive full.
For me, this looks like a rat trap, where Harpoon is a really juicy bit of cheese. We're going to see what BDSA want to throw into that trap. It's going to be the Ornn, so their composition look a little bit more traditional. The front to back is definitely on the cards if they want to pull the trigger on that one. But I'm scared for the Aphelios, because who's standing between the Aphelios and this Zhao?
I mean, it's just basically Lulu, right? I think the goal here is the top side of ESCA in these team fights are probably just looking for their high value targets, right? Whether it's, even if you're picking on their Erdote, to be honest with you, Erdote, sorry, the Renata, the Xayah, the Viktor. I think that's just going to be their goal, to remove the damage carries and the disruption of the Renata, whilst if BDSA's top side inside of Sheo and Agresivoo try and go towards Harpoon, Marlon is always going to be there to supplement him with the wild growth, with the shields, with the speed ups, and I think that's probably the angle that ESCA are going for. I will say, because of the nature of the likes of the, you know, the Nocturne and even the Kennen and the Yone to a degree, I think the early game, as we expect from a lot of Ultra Liga teams, will be quite passive, and I think that's going to give Sheo and BDSA a rather large window to try and work with. I think the issue is there's just not a whole bunch of very consistent setup to work around with the Zhao, and that could definitely cause them problems, especially when you consider, you know, some of the mobility and escape tools that are available to, especially the solo laners, right? Spirit Unbound can kind of be used in kind of weird ways. Q3, of course, the dash, things like, of course, the Electric Rush. I think that's what the Kennen E is called. Anyway, the speed up thing where he just runs away really quickly. It's going to be hard to lock down some of the solo laners. So I'm curious to see what BDSA's angle of attack is. I think when you look at their team composition, though, you know, post 20 minutes, that's a very solid front to back team fighting composition, which is going to be hard to stand up to 5v5 without finding these high value targets with dive on ESCA's side.
And I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how these two team compositions decide to interact with each other. But before we get on to that one, let's have a quick reminder of who's taking to the Rift. ESCA versus BDSA Academy. ESCA coming out of the Ultra League, BDSA, of course, coming out of the LFL. On the side of ESCA, HeSSZero, Zona, Mrozku, Harpoon, and Marlon. And they're playing an interesting style of League of Legends, which will be fascinating to see if it works out.
I think what's been cool to see about ESCA so far is they've had a bit of a mix in terms of drafts, right? We had that one draft into Bifrost where they were definitely looking to play more early mid, but it just felt like the traditional habits kind of still kicked in. They weren't as proactive in the early game, and that kind of lent into Bifrost winning. BDSA, of course, Agresivoo, Sheo, Xico, Crownshot, and Erdote on the bottom lane. Again, BDSA, a team that we were probably expecting, you know, if you asked most people how Group C would fall, it would probably be, you know, Fnatic Team Kesso, given how they're performing domestically, then BDSA, then maybe Bifrost or the Ultra Liga team, depending on how you sort of viewed ESCA's strength. So far, near flip of that, right? Bifrost at the top, Fnatic are obviously now tied, or will be tied after this game, pending the result, in second place. And then, of course, the loser will be at the bottom of this. And if it were to be BDSA, definitely, you know, regionally, against expectations, right? So far, the French teams have been absolutely monstrous. LDLC, Karmine Corp coming back in their second week to, of course, take first place in the first seed away from X7. They all look strong. I think it'll definitely be, you know, a bit awkward to be the odd one out that doesn't make it. Not necessarily as the first seed per se, right? It can be kind of difficult from this position to make it to first seed, but to not even make it into groups will definitely be a bit of an upset to expectations from BDSA's side.
And I mean, of course, we can't say that they'd be the complete odd one out because Vitality B, while undefeated at the top of their group, we don't know exactly where they're going to finish up. They're playing tomorrow as they finish out Group A. But we're moving swiftly towards Summoner's Rift for our second game here at the Amazon European Masters. Not the whole tournament. This isn't the second game of the tournament. This is the second game of the day. As we head onto Summoner's Rift, ESCA on the blue side, BDSA Academy on the red. And Jamada, we talked a little bit about what these two teams want to do, how they win the League of Legends game. In the early stages, what are we expecting to see? Because we don't necessarily see all that much Nocturne around these parts.
Yeah, he's not particularly popular. I think he's still quite an annoying champion to deal with at the very least. But I do worry about his ability to, you know, sort of not necessarily gain access to the backline, right? At the end of the day, you just need vision and you press R. But I think the sticking power is what's going to be in question for me, right? Being able to stay on top of, you know, the likes of a Viktor who can just drop the gravity field. You're going to have to flash off it, otherwise you get stunned and then the damage comes in. Going on to the likes of the Xayah, right? Featherstorm up in the air. Yes, your tether will still stick and the fear can connect. But the issue is you're then putting yourself in harm's way by having all those feathers recalled onto you and you get bursted down very easily. It's definitely going to be quite tricky for him in the late stage. But in the early game, the Nocturne, as you so politely asked, I think we're just looking for farming in Zona's case here. Just looking to try and hit level 6 as soon as possible. Gonna get a ward down. Throws up the Rammus okay as well. Actually won't get a ward down instead. But we'll be starting on this blue side of the jungle. It looks like it will just go for a path top to bot. Sheo, at the very least, will be starting on his red buff, so you expect him to end his clear on the bottom side. Of course, we've seen Zhao's into some of these enchanter lanes do some pretty spicy things going for level 2s. It's something we often mostly only see into the Caitlyn lane to disrupt the tempo, but we'll see what Sheo gets up to. Again, the setup from his laners isn't necessarily the greatest across the board. It's very inconsistent. If it lands, then great, but you expect him to try and get some pressure down where he can, at the very least in presence.
I want to ask you something a little bit as well, just as an extension to what we're going to see in the early game. And something that I'm just quite curious about, so I'm going to ask you about it. Erdote on the Renata Glasc has started up with that red trinket, meaning that there's going to be a little bit less ward coverage down the bot side. Does that potentially give an opening to ESCA, maybe to be able to sneak in a little bit less seat?
I mean, it could do. They've got a ward and a tri-bush for now, dropped by Crownshot, but I think it's more to do with bush control. Bush control, very important into things like a Lulu that can kind of poke you out from the bushes with very little return. So I think maybe they're just looking to potentially clear away a lane ward. So if you can get control of the bush, then it kind of just gives you a little more to work with. But you can see some of the poke can be a little bit irritating. Crownshot does have Longsword 3 though, on top of the cookies as well. So a lot of sustain will come out. And it has been matched by Harpoon? Harpoon. Thinking of Marpoon, of course. But yes, we'll see how the laning phase itself goes. In the mid lane though, Xico will be taking lane priority in the earlier stages, as about expected. But as things progress, as Mrozku gets things like the Berserker's Grease, a couple of extra attack speed items, maybe even an early Zeal, depending on how he feels about the item inside this lane, then he'll start to gain control of the waves, sort of gain a little more kill pressure as well. See what he can do onto Xico in the isolated 1v1.
And while we're up top side, as you can see on your screens, Kennen versus Ornn. Agresivoo just gonna not be having the most pleasant gameplay experience in the earliest couple of stages. We'll be able to put in a bit of damage and maybe catch out HeSSZero a little bit, but I think it's going to be Kennen on the bully more often than not. And at level 6, that huge ultimate. Actually, both of these champions are going to have huge impact in team fights using those ultimates.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen, especially last Amazon EU Masters, how big of a pick Kennen turned into towards the end of the tournament. It was starting to approach a point where I feel like teams were getting so tired they would just consider B1ing it, just because of the strength of the champion inside that meta. And that's also something I'd love to track, especially once we hit knockout stages. Tournament metas are always so fun to try and break down what teams really prioritize. I feel like, you know, we do have a very loose meta at the moment, but a lot of teams, you know, ESCA, for example, they're running the Yone over Nocturne at the moment. They do have their own comfort picks, which they lean on no matter what the meta is.
I mean, for me, the question is, are they ahead of the curve, or is it comfort? Is this actually the secret OP strat that we're going to see terrorizing Silver solo queue in the coming days, or whether it is just a case of Mrozku really liking the champion and options potentially being a little bit more limited for Xayah. We saw a lot of bans out in the jungle this time around. Those a couple of AP champions, and of course the usual suspects being removed as well. But I am very, very excited to see how ESCA want to be playing around these team fights. I know we've talked about it a reasonable amount, so we don't have to go into depth, but this idea of not just going for the very traditional front to back, or not being built to go for the very traditional front to back, because if they want to go for that, hey, Kennen diving forward, you've got Yone as well, it's not awful, but they want to be going around the flank a little bit more, as Xico feels a little bit of damage from the Yone there.
It does feel a little bit, but not so much. Mrozku definitely feeling the pressure being poked out. BDSA reads this rotation.
He's in a little bit of trouble. Will be exhausted. Taken back. Has to flash. Gets a shield from Marlon and is trying to get away. But Xico flashing forward for the first blood there as Viktor secures the kill.
Yeah, just great read. Great map opening as well. Or read on the map opening, rather, from BDSA. See Xayah try and come in towards the mid lane. Maybe whether it's a gank or just trying to ensure Mrozku tries to get a more favorable back, perhaps. Hard to know, but they read it well, and they get themselves first blood. Xico does blow his flash, however, and that's going to make him a lot more vulnerable in the mid lane. Not only to the ganks, but actually to the 1v1. Specifically, of course, Yone, all the skill shots can lead into pretty much just chain CC into 100-0, 100-2-0, but see, the ward plays towards the Raptors. They've got control ward in that in that pixel brush, rather, just to ensure that they know they're not on vision. Great work from Marlon to try and keep Xayah alive for as long as possible, but once that shield dissipates and Xico flashes over the wall, the Death Razor is all but done.
And giving that first kill over to the Viktor, who's going to throw down the ultimate to shove out the wave and grab himself a very tasty recall. Looks good for BDSA, and I've got to say, that rotation, that read is absolutely stellar work, and Agresivoo now being the aggressor as he puts some damage down onto Kennen.
Yeah, surprised Agresivoo didn't consider pulling the trigger on the Call of the Forge God there. Has Ignite off the spellbook, so I feel like Lethal was probably there, almost half HP. Or at least maybe you look to force HeSSZero's flash, but for now, we'll actually just end up interrupting HeSSZero's recall, and it could just stop him from basing altogether. Looking to potentially just teleport back to lane with a favorable recall. Hasn't based yet, has 42 stacks left on the cult. HeSSZero really did know his role in this game, just to kind of sit out there and farm with that cult start. And I think the fact that top lane has been so uninterrupted as well could mean that this Kennen could come out into the mid game pretty strong. 62 CS at 7.5 minutes. It's not quite perfect, but definitely doing pretty well. And with that call as well, we'll just get that additional injection of gold towards those power spikes. Things like, you know, those sword boots right there being almost or effectively the sole AP on the team. Magic Pen should have a whole bunch of value onto those, you know, higher value targets like Crownshot, like Xico.
It's even that they're going to not be building towards it, and Sheo on the Rift Herald goes for that early smite, is going to be trying to grab the objective as fast as possible. And with this Rift Herald, it doesn't look like there's going to be a contest. ESCA not in a position or not being of a mind to try and get this one going. Xayah is down on the bot side, has the Paranoia available, so maybe considering a dive, but decides again is going to move up towards that Rift Scuttle. But what do you want to see Sheo do with this Rift Herald?
I think just give it to Crownshot, right? You've got Agresivoo on the top side.
Ooh, aggression in the mid lane. Nice stun, but it doesn't matter as Mrozku secures his first kill. Nocturne goes low, but it's fine.
Throws up the okay. He knows he's fine. And the payback from Xayah on towards the mid lane, of course. And like you said, Xico blew that flash. It makes him a very vulnerable target, not just to the 1v1 setup, but also to the Nocturne ganks. And both of those things come in with conjunction with one another. And Viktor dies. They pick up their kill. And Mrozku is on the board. It's definitely what you want to have from a pick like Yone in a competitive, saying you need to get him going. You need to get him into a position where he hits those items earlier than you perhaps want to see if you're on the BDSA side. And Xayah as well. We talk about the globals like Nocturne, like Shen, even Gangplank to a degree. You always want to see the first ultimate result in something tangible in terms of rewards, and a kill definitely is that.
And being able to secure that relatively early kill, of course. We've seen a lot of aggression so far at this tournament, so having 2 kills at almost 10 minutes isn't exactly peak aggression, but Sheo and Xico maybe looking to make it a little bit more so. The call of Forge Call has been used by Agresivoo top as well, but a nice flash from Xayah sees him out of harm's way as the roam bot ends up coming to nothing because Soda's already there.
Zona is holding on to the bottom side. You can see, I think you can imagine Sheo probably wanted to drop the Herald on the bottom side, but with Zona being there, it just has threat of that Herald getting popped, not actually ending up charging underneath the tower. And Mrozku is now at the point with that D-Shield, with the Vamp Scepter, where he can sustain through just about all of the poke that Xico will give him. And it just means he's waiting for his ultimate to come off cooldown, and he'll just look for an opportunity to blow Zico's flash in the 1v1 if he wants to play for that kill pressure, or he'll just consistently have priority because he knows he's in no real danger. 1v1 at the very least. Sheo is here and will very happily jump on him if given the opportunity.
And Sheo is still here, hanging around. Mrozku maybe feels like something's amiss, and by amiss I mean someone's missing, as Erdote is also hanging around mid, hasn't been shown bot, and we're seeing these supports a little bit more unleashed than maybe we predicted or saw in the last game, where we had a Tarm catch Rakan and of course dual all over the map, but Rux was a little bit less freed up to get around and cause mischief. But in the top side, Agresivoo and HeSSZero just been enjoying their time together, as it looks like this should be a BDSA second dragon. We're going to get the Hex Gates activating across the rift, so a little bit more maneuverability, and BDSA are going to be the ones playing for that early assault.
Yeah. I will say, on a brief tangent, the Hex Gates have grown on me as the split's gone on. I do remember when we also had the dragon which shall not be named. I might have to hold on to the point, maybe not. And the Hex Gates on the map. I think maybe the other dragon was what gave me such a negative connotation.
The other
towards
dragon.
change. We're not going to name it. It's like saying Voldemort, really, in League of Legends, I think. But especially after... yeah.
Is if that here at the Amazon European Masters,
okay,
if you say Chemtech Dragon 3 times in a row,
hey,
it
None
appears
of that.
behind you.
None of
This
that.
is just
right?
what I've heard. Don't say it into a mirror. Don't say it on this tournament.
No.
And it'll be okay. It can't hurt you anymore.
It's something that we've all put to the back of our minds. But something that isn't the back of Sheo's mind is getting Crownshot these plates with this Herald. He's made his way back down to the bottom side.
Parador available though.
Down here. Yeah, I think the issue is Sheo's sticking around. If Sheo's basing on vision, I can't quite tell. I don't think he is, but he's gone now. If they were to pull the trigger, it would have been really good timing. But didn't have vision on that Xin Zhao base, and still just thought he could have been hanging around. And that would just be a couple plates going into Crownshot's back pocket, which he will sure be happy about. As Mrozku eats a whole bunch of damage from Xico. The full Trader's Harpoon!
Oh, I'm not sure about that one, Harpoon. Don't go in there. Caught up by the damage, putting forward. Unable to secure anything, but that was a very risky maneuver.
Yeah, surprised Crownshot didn't commit things like the Featherstorm to try and just go for an all-in, considering Erdote committed the Renata as well. But I think maybe just concerned in the turnaround from Harpoon because he had such good guns for a fight like that. Red and white means do not fight is what the rhyme has turned into. And now Mrozku.
Oh, Mrozku gonna have to use the ultimate defensively to get out of dodge as Sheo and Xico look to make something happen. Unable to find a kill this time around, but Viktor gonna try and get some damage down. And the Yone so far has been not enjoying his life as much as we necessarily think in the laning phase. But that being said, even if Farm has that kill advantage, things can't be that bad.
Yeah, things can't be that bad. And I think just being able to pick up his next item will probably be... of course, making his way, rather, I should phrase it, towards that shield boat will just help him survive the lane a little better with the action shield, Agresivoo.
This time around can't dodge away from it, but Sheo's a little bit late to the punch. Agresivoo pulling the trigger maybe a second too soon. Means that it's all going to peter out and nothing's really achieved. But Xico moving back towards this mid lane. Wants to try and keep control as much as possible. We've got the Rift Herald second of the game spawning up in the not too distant future. Sheo is down here as it does arrive on the Rift. Sheo actually trying to get some damage down, bullying Yone himself. So for Mrozku, feeling the pressure a little bit.
Definitely feeling the pressure a bit. And actually, observers, if I could ask, if we could swap over to the gold, because I think Mrozku really needs a shield. But yeah, he's got 600 gold, so he's going to get the shield boat. And that's going to be really important for this third dragon fight, because BDSA, they already have 2. It's a Hex Tech soul as well. We've seen how powerful the soul can be already at this tournament.
For sure.
And I think definitely, you know, it's objectively the strongest soul, right? I think it's definitely stronger than the Infernal. The fact that it provides you with damage and that AoE slow, potentially with the chain link. Just really powerful. But having that shield bow now puts him at parry with Xico on the opposite side, who's got that Ludens as well. And Mythics across the board have come in, plus a couple of components here and there. So now ESCA, they are more or less on even footing in the items. It means they can try and have a fight on even grounds in that regard. I think the issue is BDSA on the bottom side in the mid lane, they should have priority at the moment. Xico's been doing a really good job of ensuring that he trades on some Mrozku at the same time as actually clearing out the wave. And Mrozku also hasn't really been, you know, too confident in shoving up the waves himself. I think more because Sheo has had a lot of presence around the mid lane, but not only that, Xeonerr hasn't necessarily been playing around the mid lane outside of that one gank, so not as confident to step up. Sheo and the rest of BDSA in the river first, priority will be theirs. Cheeky ward on the Hex Gate will be cleared away. And ESCA will potentially try and make their entrance into the river through the bottom side, but it's still going to be a very painful wall to try and push through. However, HeSSZero here first. Agresivoo, no teleports, he's got exhaust, so he's walking down. But do ESCA know that? They look to try and find a fight beforehand. Looking for...
Oh, Mrozku just going in for a little bit of poke.
Oh, God.
Let's be careful, though. Sheo's going to follow through, get the damage down. Mrozku can't go over the wall with the ultimate. He's actually going to try and flash away. Will be able to slide out eventually. Xayah moving forward. Has the ultimate available, but not going to be able to find anyone.
I think that's it.
Pull the trigger. That might be it on the dragon.
Yeah.
Third of the game for BDSA. But, I mean, ESCA there holding units. There's no paranoia either, of course, but they want to at least show members. The call of the Forge God is being used. Agresivoo might be looking to get aggressive, though. Xeonerr on the side. The damage going through is massive. As HeSSZero goes into the fight, they're going to lose out on the dragon, though. But will the fight go their direction? BDSA members looking pretty low. Sheo hanging around the back, so is Renata Glasc. But HeSSZero is in a lot of trouble. Will be beaten down. Crownshot with the kill. As it looks like they're going to maraud forward once again. Agresivoo looking towards Marlon, gets a nice knock up the damage down and burns the Lulu out. Xeonerr and Mrozku only survivors. 3 kills and dragon going the way of BDSA.
And that's going to be a huge turning point for BDSA. On soul point, able to win out on a fight. And honestly, that flank looked so threatening for a moment from Agresivoo. Or rather, HeSSZero rather. But Agresivoo, I believe, exhausted the Kennen. I mean, it could have actually been Renata Glasc. We'll get confirmation via the replay. But just, you know, being pitched on 3 different fronts, right? The front, both sides. But unfortunately, HeSSZero just gets exhausted. Seems like by both members of exhaust at the exact same time. And as soon as that exhaust comes down, there's no massive AoE damage. But I mean, the fight was always going to be rough regardless, because ultimate economy was in the favor of BDSA. There was no, you know, paranoia to follow up on that massive ultimate from the Kennen. There was no fate sealed on top of all of that additional CC. It was just the slicing Maelstrom, and BDSA were really comfortable dealing with that because of the 2 exhausts.
Now BDSA move from one objective to another. They're going to be able to grab themselves a Rift Towers. Mrozku just trying to put some damage down, but Ornn, not really the assassination kind of target. Doesn't really care all that much with his piles of armor that he's been stacking up. Because as you mentioned, there's only one real AP threat coming in from ESCA. And of course, Kennen enjoys being the only AP threat. We've talked about that one already. And the Sork boots are going to be nice for him. But if HeSSZero isn't there or isn't really achieving too much in the game as of yet, it just means that itemizing against this damage is super easy for the likes of Ornn.
Yeah, no, it is. Ornn going to be totally fine dealing with HeSSZero on the side lane. And just in general, I mean, if he doesn't have to deal with the AP, he's sitting on a null magic mana anyway, just to sort of ease some of that damage. Just stacking up on basically, you know, any armor item he wants, whether it's Fawn Mail, whether it's Frozen Heart. Choice is really his. In fact, it does look like he's gonna go towards a Force of Nature. I'm not sure about going that second in a game where you have so much AD and
that's just
Marlon
an
is
assassination.
popped.
Marlon just doesn't exist anymore, and Xeonerr might be going the same direction as he's gonna have to flash away, but Xico teleporting through doesn't actually find combat as the skirmish dissipates. But BDSA seem to be running away with this game just a little bit. The second Rift Herald being dropped into the mid lane to open up the map even further. It's just going to make it harder and harder for ESCA to actually find safe haven in this matchup.
Yeah, now is ESCA, I mean, realistically trying to play a small pocket of fog, looking for a flank.
Teleport
Speaking of looking for
behind.
flanks.
Here's the flank coming through from HeSSZero. The paranoia is going to be thrown down as well. They're looking towards Renata. Glasc. Can't find her though on the side. Zhao there, but look at the call of the Portugal. Won't land anyone, but will part the rest of ESCA. Sheo stepping forward. Winds come lightning. Dump it from Mrozku. That's a lot of damage coming down from the Yone. That's a double kill immediately from Mrozku. Absolutely sensational from the Yone. As Crownshot has to run back towards the tower. Agresivoo full retreat as well. It looks great initially for BDSA. But this time around, it's ESCA that take the fight.
Yeah, Mrozku just turns that one on his head. They didn't quite realize that he had Q3 proc, so Spirit Unbound into knock up. Spirit Cleave on top of that with a final mortal still, and that's all it took for him to secure that double kill. And it just holds BDSA in their tracks just for a moment. It brings the gold back up to parity. We'll get the replay as it's after the play in the mid lane where Sheo goes in and teleport comes in. You can see on the bottom side again. This is the kind of fights that we need to continually see from ESCA, where they're just approaching from multiple fronts, whether it's the sides, whether it's, you know, sort of just one from directly from behind in the flank. Doesn't really matter, but the turnaround is great. That Renata stops HeSSZero from going in, but you can see the Nado stacked up into Spirit Unbound, double knock up onto 2 targets. You can't really do much about it, and the Face Shield comes in immediately, so there is no response, no flash after the initial knock up. The Spirit Cleave as well to finish out on the snapback to give him that double kill. It's a moment of spice. Yone, such an irritating champion to deal with in moments like that, where you feel like you can run the rest of the team down, but he's got the Nado stacked up, and you can snap back to safety with the mini death mark. And now has the Infinity Edge, already picked up 3-0, 222 CS. Mrozku's online, he's really scary. I think should also have that fully sort of stacked up as attack speed bonus to ensure that the Qs are on the lowest possible cooldown as well. So he is really just on spike. And it's going to be an absolute menace. And I think Xico's itemization, very, very pivotal in this game. With the Zhonyas, it's just going to stop some of that diving threat from coming in. And speaking of diving threat,
There's on the side, paranoia is there. Mrozku has to bot back as he takes a lot of damage as Dragon's spawning it. Remember, this will be Soul if BDSA can secure it. And they've already started it up, and it's going to take a long time for ESCA to get there. Their paranoia is available. You've got to imagine it's going to be used, but it's going to be secured so easily by BDS Academy. 4 Dragons, 2 Hextech, and the Hextech Soul to boot. Now, ESCA needs to be a little bit careful because this fight might not be so easy for them. Now with the damage coming on through, as Sheo finds the Nocturne. He's going to dive on forward, but he only finds Agresivoo looking for a way out, but won't be able to find it as the Ornn secures the kill. Mrozku now cutting through from the other side of the fight. Might be looking for a decent angle to get the ultimate down, but we've caught up in the slicing maelstrom. Sheo manages to get the stay alive as he's bailed out of that fight with a kill of his own. Xico still stepping forward, but with 1v3 from the Viktor. And he's confident, but the Glorious Revolution doesn't start today as he heads back to his team.
yeah, BDSA just going to go moved up towards the Baron. And I mean, you can see the damage potential of the ESCA team when it comes to, you know, diving some of the AoE team fighting tools that are there. But unfortunately, BDSA are just a little bit too strong with that Hextech Soul. They get the pick onto Xeonerr as well because he face checks in, and Xeonerr does a good job of trying to survive. But the issue is his health bar was just burned out too low. Agresivoo was able to finish him off. And Yone, Mrozku not able to find any kind of miracle team fight with a face seal beyond that. Baron secured, and we'll get a replay for confirmation on what started. I mean, it just felt like Team ESCA, they just weren't really able to, you know, enter the river. They tried to use the bottom side as opposed to the mid lane. It felt like BDSA would always beat them out on mid lane priority. But there's just no vision here for ESCA to work with. They're just walking directly in to BDSA. The Call of the Forge God comes down. The Renata armor keeps Xeonerr in place for a little while. It does mean that Ornn has to kind of dive into a bit of an awkward position, but you can see Mrozku gets the Q stacked up, but gets handshaked backwards. That's what makes it so awkward. I didn't catch that in the live. Otherwise, Mrozku could have maybe found backline access with a fate sealed. Great stuff from the BDSA support to ensure that, you know, any further dive isn't followed up on by that Yone.
Erdote has been playing very, very well this game so far. ESCA going to be trading out towers top and bot. They're going to be able to grab themselves a little bit of an objective bounty because the gold situation is actually not that far away from them right now. Only about 1.5k, but with this Baron and the pushing power from BDS Academy, they're stepping forward. They've already taken 2 down on this bot side, and the inhibitor target might be next. Too many members of ESCA were extended outside of their base, and I think the inhibitor tower is going to pay the price.
Yeah, it should do. There goes that tower. ESCA, they make it back to the bottom side now, but I think this inhibitor might just be a foregone conclusion as well. Look at the size of that shield on Harpoon. I mean, the Lulu scaling's come online. Harpoon has 2 items, the Bloodthirster as well. But our BDS just a little bit too far gone in the game state. I don't necessarily feel like just yet, but one more team fight, given how close they are to the base with the Soul, with the Baron, could spell the end of the game for ESCA in a 1-3 scoreline.
And BDS are taking a second inhibitor down, looking towards the inhibitor itself, of course, just taking the tower, and this one could well be focused. You've got to feel that ESCA are going to pull the trigger, and there it is, Paranoid going forward into the middle of the enemy team, and so much damage coming down onto the Nocturne. Crownshot picks up the first kill of the fight, and members of ESCA are just ripped to pieces. Crownshot's doing so much work as Marlon survives. Harpoon moves up towards the top side, but is chased down by an angry BDS Academy. They've seen the success of the other LFL teams and think, hey, we want a bit of that action as well, and they may well start themselves off with a win today here at the Amazon European Masters. They're looking towards Marlon. He's already gone. Harpoon is going to be dragged back into the stun, into the damage, into the ace coming through. BDSA should secure themselves a kill right here, right now, 26 minutes in, and put themselves on a 2-2 rating going into the rest of the day.
Yeah, BDSA setting themselves up for a bit of a run into a playoff spot. They should be sitting pretty comfortably with that result. 2-2. They will be tied up with Fnatic, Team Kesso, who will be playing ESCA after this game, after the breaks. Very dominating performance from BDSA. It has to be said, I felt like ESCA, despite having some pretty creative tools, some very fun tools to potentially work with and around, it just felt like they weren't able to ever get the ball rolling hard enough for picks like Mrozku on the Yone. And then when it came to the team fightings, situations that did happen rather, it just felt like BDSA had everything under control. The flank around that third dragon, HeSSZero was just exhausted, double exhausted actually, wasn't allowed to do his job. Almost had already been blown, so there was no follow-up on that. That final team fight there, for example, as well, being able to lock down the threat that Yone was pivotal. I think he got Renata armored into handshook, and he just couldn't move for the entire of that team fight. By the time he was able to actually cast Fate Sealed, his team was already dead. He cast it and he died. He just snapped back to his own dead body. Great stuff from BDSA from top to bottom, really. Everyone was on point this game.
And for ESCA, this puts them in a really, really rough position moving forward, trying to qualify out of this group. Losing here and knowing that you're going to have to go up against not only Fnatic TQ in the next matchup, but also Bifrost, who, as we mentioned at the beginning of the matchup, look to be pretty on fire at the moment in terms of their performances. It's going to be a very difficult one. But we're going to jump to a short break. When we come back, of course, it's going to be that matchup. ESCA needing a win up against Fnatic TQ, who need to bounce back after their own loss in the first game of the day. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you in a few minutes.